Hey, hi, hello, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, and if you haven't heard the news, you heard it here first. Hip hop is dead. Yeah, that whole hip hop genre, it's out of here. It's gone. Sayonara. Bye, buddy. There's so many people freaking out and talking about and overanalyzing this headline right now about how, I guess so far this year, there hasn't been a #1 hip hop song or album. Oh my God, what is going on? Look, we've talked about things on this channel like the potential of there being such a thing as peak trap, and hip hop for a while has been the zeitgeist, and culturally speaking, in a musical sense, but nothing lasts forever. It's not going to be that way for the rest of our lives. Popularity wise, what goes up must come down eventually. But with that being said, I'm not necessarily seeing this as like the mark of some slippery slope or shocking downward trend, for a couple of reasons. Number one, the number of artists who have had #1 full-length albums so far this year have not been many. We have K-pop represented with Tomorrow Together, also Stray Kids, also Lewis Capaldi. We know that's hot and popular, obviously. Also Taylor Swift, Midnights, she's having a moment, doing the tour, doing the Ice Spice crossover, even though that record was from last year. For weeks and weeks and weeks, it's been the new Morgan Wallen record. But then lastly, we also have SZA, because SOS has dominated at #1 for 8 weeks this year. While SZA obviously is not strictly a hip-hop artist, she borrows a lot of the braggadocious themes on her new record from hip-hop. She raps on the album at one point on one of the best tracks on the record. She is an R&B artist on a rap label, and her music continues to be incredibly popular with hip-hop fans. You can't tell me this album isn't #1 in part because of hip-hop fans listening to it. But look, that's just the #1 spot on the chart. I feel like people tend to really get super obsessed when it comes to charts or award shows, like, oh, who's #1? Who got the award? Who got the top spot? When that's not necessarily representative of the best and most artistic music out there, or really what is influential in moving things culturally speaking on a deeper level. Tons of artists have gone #1 over the decades and decades and decades of popular music and were never to be seen or heard from again just 5 or 6 years later, maybe even a shorter amount of time than that. So again, just simply being #1 isn't necessarily all that. And when you look deeper into the Billboard 200 albums chart, you see hip hop freaking everywhere. You see the new Moneybagg Yo project. You see the new Dirk project. You see the latest Metro Boomin project, including the record he did for the Spider-Verse soundtrack, which that tie-in is one of the most culturally relevant landmark moments for hip hop records so far this year. That movie is amazing, gigantic, huge. The soundtrack is loaded with hip-hop music and hip-hop influenced beats, and this film is spreading those sounds to millions of people just by virtue of it being a great and popular film, and that has more impact than just being #1 on the goddamn Billboard charts. I had to tell you guys what the #1 records and artists were on the Billboard charts so far this year, because most likely you didn't even know. I could have made up 3 and you wouldn't have even noticed. In fact, I did. Earlier when I said Lewis Capaldi had a #1 album so far this year, yeah, I'm sorry, that wasn't true. But really, most people are not tracking who is #1 on the Billboard charts. And again, when you dig deeper, you see lots of hip-hop records, not just new ones, but also ones that are months and months old at this point. Freaking Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is holding on to a spot there. Drake and 21 Savage, the Lil Baby record, even Certified Lover Boy is holding on to a spot in the Billboard Top 200. How at this point? Who is still listening to that freaking album? Pop Smoke is in the mix, and we even have Tyler, the Creator's Flower Boy, and Igor on there. But even more importantly, in my opinion, there are records on the Billboard 200 albums chart this week that are hip-hop records, and they're 10 plus years old. We got Biggie hits, we got Eminem hits, we have Forest Hills Drive. Is that 10 years old at this point? It has to be. I mean, it might be, whatever. We have Good Kid, Mad City, we have Drake's Take Care, even 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Tryin'. What more confirmation do you need that hip-hop is being treated like, kind of the artistic and classic genre that it is, that you have all of these, hundreds of thousands of people going back and listening to these old ass albums again and again and again because they've aged well, because they're still relevant today. Like even Danny Brown and JPEG Mafia had Scaring the Hose chart this year. Like what more proof do you need that people are paying attention to rap music, even the weird underground shit, to have a record like that chart? Fucking number one, it doesn't mean that much. If we took the 200 spots on this chart, and let's say a third of those records were country albums, and the number one spot happened to be a country record, but the rest of the chart was mostly hip hop records, like which genre is weighing more in people's minds? Even if you don't have those one or two artists for a moment that are like, hitting the top and doing the most numbers, like the vast majority of numbers, the plurality of the streams and music consumption is still going to that genre. It's just happening in a wider and broader sense, and that's okay. And look, in the next 5 or 6 years, there may be a bit of a dip in terms of like the most relevant rap artists doing the most numbers or topping the charts over and over and over. And if it does, that's all right. What people want to listen to the most or demand the most in the mainstream changes all the time and often has little to nothing to do with how vibrant the genre they're operating is at a ground level. Look at rock music. That shit, as far as like chart performance, has been fucking dead in the water for a while now. And yet there's still like dozens of really cool, interesting, underground alternative rock records coming out every year. So if you want my honest opinion here, I don't think this is like a super scary thing. I don't think this is like, the 5-alarm fire that some people are making it out to be. Could just be a bump. And even if it does form into some kind of trend, like there's still going to be great artists making cool and interesting music. All Billboard charts, especially that number one spot, tells you is what happens to be the most marketable thing at that moment in time in the mainstream. While there is a lot of good music that does go number one, it doesn't tell you whether or not the music is good or even culturally relevant in a long-term sense. So there you go. There you have it. Those are my thoughts. That's my spiel. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the deal. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Love you. Mwah. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Billboard charts, farts forever.